Hello and welcome to our first Living Web live stream, a new version of a video we're going to be doing on a weekly basis here as we expand into a whole new chapter for Living Web Farms. We're going Living Web live from anywhere and everywhere where the leading edge regenerative practices are being utilized, like in the many workshops that we put together for you over the years here on our channel. We're so proud to have over 700 videos and to have met so many wonderful teachers over the years, some who have passed on and whose wisdom stays with us because we were able to meet them and record their wisdom when we had a chance. And now it's time for us to shift gears a little bit. We're changing from a land-based operation to really truly being mobile and live, being able to go anywhere, cover events, and still bring you more media, but we need your support. So we're going to be fundraising. We've got a donate button on our website now at livingwebfarms.org, and you can also be a supporting member here on the channel at several different levels. We've got lots of perks to go with that, but to start us off today for our first Living Web live show, where we're going to talk about lots of great topics, is our director with us, Pat Battle.
Thanks,
Pat,
Lisa.
Yay, thank you for being here today.
Absolutely, yeah. Excited to be here and talk about the next decade of Living Web Farms, where we go virtual and experience a lot of outreach. In the last couple months, I've had two different groups from, or an individual actually in one group from Africa. Now, South Africa, I'm going to be doing a webinar with some students in South Africa coming up, and we see that the information that we share, it's not our information. Sometimes it's information that some of us generate, but lots of it is information that's generated by all of us in the regenerative community, but that we help to aggregate and help to give a voice to, is having, resonance everywhere. It is, reverberating throughout the world, and we need it to. We need that to happen. And when you were talking yesterday, you kind of started a little metaphor for me. You talked about how our first phase, that first 11 years, we grew that tree. We grew the tree that was Living Web, and now we're seeing seedlings. And that got me to think about one of my favorite ways to lift my spirits when I reflect on the fact that we are not adapting quickly enough, that there's not enough regenerative agriculture happening. We're not doing enough to allow nature to let us continue to be a tenant on this planet. And I was pretty electrified. One night, pretty late, I stayed up late reading it and thinking about it. And it was a story, and it may be apocryphal, but it describes a real happening. And that is that there was this agricultural volunteer in Africa who was leaving, going back to Australia. And as he was leaving, he pointed out that there was this one area where there was a remaining native tree in an area that had been overgrazed, not out of stupidity, but out of the reality that nomads were not allowed to roam anymore because of nation states, which totally disrupted their natural lifestyles and forced them to do things that weren't regenerative, even though their original lifestyle was totally regenerative. And he noticed that there was this one little area of native vegetation, a tree that was thriving, and some seedlings. And he said, if you can protect that, if you can keep the animals, the grazing animals away from that, and maybe make a little bit of adjustment to the soil so water flows there and gathers around there, those seedlings will thrive and they'll spread. And over the course of time, not that much time actually, there were Peace Corps volunteers in the 60s who returned in the, at the beginning of this century and didn't think they were looking at the same part of the world. Because what happened was a dream that the nations in the Sahel, who realized that they had to do something to stop desertification, had made a huge attempt to create a 10-mile wide band of trees that went across the continent, right below the Sahara. It didn't work very well. The trees weren't cared for. They weren't the right ones, and it wasn't very successful. But this indigenous effort, as this story goes, inspired by one person pointing out that if you just nurture this one area where nature does have a chance to take foot, it can spread. Now, I've since talked to other people and say, well, a lot of other ways that happened. But it did happen, and it wasn't government. It was the native farmers, the people of those areas who helped this incredible, now 20-foot wide band of trees that spans the continent there.
Is it 20 miles?
I'm sorry,
You were
25.
saying, right?
Yeah, I keep saying 20.
25
25 miles.
miles
25
of
miles, right.
trees
20 foot
now.
of trees would be incredibly
Yeah, but
tenuous.
it's really
Wouldn't hold on.
great, right?
Yeah.
And nature not only takes hold, but then it really works on the principles of abundance and biodiversity. And next thing you know, you've got a restoring ecosystem, just like the Contour Lines project.
Right, yes.
And we get a chance, right? So yes,
And the
we're in
metaphor
senescence.
for us is that we have been growing this tree. Now we're trying to get some seedlings out there. We're trying to get it that if we get nurtured, we can spread those seedlings. This group, this agricultural foundation in South Africa, they're inspired by our content. They want to do it too. They want to teach it. So if people think that what we do is important and that by supporting us, we can spread regenerative practices and a philosophy that says that we want to be a part of nature and not try to rule nature and extract from nature, but rather be a part of nature and thrive from its abundance, then you might want to support us. There's plenty of other wonderful organizations. I could give a long list of organizations that you should support, and maybe someday we will do that. I'd love to do that. But if you think that we're worth supporting, we now are at a stage in our evolution where that support would be really useful. And hopefully you'll think it's worth doing.
All right, get over to our website. Big, giant, beautiful donate button right there and a nice paragraph about our shift. And we really, I'm very passionate about our media that we bring. I've shot all the videos over the years with Taylor, the media team here. And, you know, we're very passionate about it because we've gotten to learn from the experts of the experts over time. We've got all this content and we've got lots more. And the regenerative ag movement is really just taking off. And people, so many people, don't yet realize that the regenerative model of agriculture and animals and ranching and polyphase, pasture management, we have a manure deficit on this planet, okay? A lot of people I hear, even on national news organizations, don't even seem to know the most basic fundamental principles of animals on land and manure and soil and life and how it builds and grows. And you know, when done in a humane and more natural way, we really need that. Those regenerative methods of ranching and raising animals and adding fertility to the soil and letting them have a good natural life as they do there with Will Harris at White Oak Pastures down in Bluffton, Georgia. Shout out to Will Harris. We have to have him on this show here one of these days. Check out the series. It's a model regenerative farm. He has proven through life cycle analysis that their beef is carbon negative. They are sequestering so much carbon through the responsible pasture management and a lot of the principles of Alan Savory. And he's also the president of the American Grass-Fed Association. But it's like, it's how we do it, right? It's how we grow that garden. It's how we take care of our garden. And speaking of that, I'm a little bit of a wild woman. I love my pollinators and all of the butterflies. So behind me, you actually see the tithonias that are out in my front yard right now. And a beautiful tree. And there's actually just one swallowtail butterfly out there every day. I'm used to swimming in a cloud of butterflies. It's one of my heavenly experiences of life on earth. I really, really love butterflies and hummingbirds and flowers and being out there in the rapture of nature. And I'm basically just looking at one little butterfly right now. So getting rid of spewing the poison, getting rid of our industrial methods of growing toxic food, it's all up for transformation, right? And that's what Living Web Farms is about. We build life. And as Pat said yesterday, we're not going to kill ourselves into a good future, right? Through poisoning the soil and whatnot. So
the longer I attempt to work with nature to grow food and not try to struggle against nature, the more I realize that the model of pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides is simply a Band-Aid on the system being out of balance. And I really, we've talked about this on our radio show before, but when I first learned about Candida auris, which is an incredibly pathogenic fungi that is got a very high mortality rate for people who are immune compromised, elderly, or very young. It can be 45 to 60% mortality. And it's incredibly hard to get rid of. I mean, I think they've now figured out some ways to control it, but originally they were tearing hospital rooms apart. They did things like put a humidifier full of hydrogen peroxide in a room for a week. And then they put a petri dish in the room, and the only living thing in the room was Candida auris. And when I read that article, and at the end it said that scientists said, this is not a new fungi, it's been around forever. It's our overuse of fungicides that is causing this to become a pathogenic fungus. And that's the same story as with the superbacteria. We cannot kill our way to plant health. And indeed, what Lisa was speaking to as far as fertility systems, the natural fertility system includes animals and plants. And I don't want to argue with vegans. I don't want to argue with people who think we shouldn't eat meat. That's fine. But you still have to give the portion of grasslands over to herbivores. And it happens to be that throughout human history, humans have been a sustainable part, a regenerative part of that process. They were one of the apex predators who could cull those herds. And it was done that way. And there's no argument that America and the world cannot continue to consume the kind of meat that we consume, raised the way it is. The CAFOs have to go. They're a disaster. And we cannot consume the quantity of meat we consume. It needs to be a part of the diet that's similar to the way it's been throughout our history, which is one of those great moments of getting protein. You know, when there was a kill, then the community had a protein charge, and the rest of the time it was heavier on vegetables and things like that. And so there can be any number of models, and I love the desire for justice for animals that comes from being a vegan. Deeply respect it, and I don't need to argue about it, but we need to all accept that animals and plants together are the natural fertility system, and we're not going to alter that. You might come up with ways whereby we don't eat those animals. That's to be decided by lots of people. But there's a piece that we didn't get to do on the ground, but we're going to support other people doing it, and that's called pasture farming, where you graze land, you graze it really heavily so that the pasture is kind of knocked back a little bit, maybe even graze it twice, a little bit sooner than you should. And then you come through and no-till plant row crops, legumes, grains, crops like that. Crops right now that are being grown with Roundup and are literally toxic as all heck. Most conventional grains, seeds, and even potatoes now, legumes in particular, concentrates 3 times the amount of Roundup as other plants. Any plant that is desiccated with Roundup is now used not only to control weeds, but to terminate crops, which causes a higher yield. They don't really know why, and gives the farmer control as to when to harvest. And so it's very convenient for farmers, but the problem is it's a systemic herbicide, so people are eating it. And we need to move to systems that are productive for farmers. I understand why farmers do this, but if we could get people to look at pasture farming, they'll find that that'll be equally productive. The mob grazing will mean that the only weeds in that pasture are going to be the pasture weeds, and they're going to have been grazed down and controlled long enough to establish that crop. And so farmers will get not only control of the weeds, but they'll get a big jump in fertility because of those manures. And it's going to have to be those kind of crops because of food safety issues. We're not going to be growing salad mix in those pastures. Yeah. We have a huge need for the production of grains. We're a little overemphasizing corn and soybean these days, yeah. But grains and legumes are a major source of food for all of us and always need to be. And this is a way to do it that is completely regenerative, because by the time these crops have matured, that pasture has recovered. So literally, you never turn the pasture over. All that sequestered carbon is still there, and you've had the production of a crop that is going to be incredibly vital, have had to work for a living. We know now that if you overfeed crops, you get less nutrition, fewer minerals and all that. Pasture farming is the future. The Great Plains will probably always be a grain basket. The steppes of the Ukraine and Russia, I forget the word for it, but the grasslands in Argentina, those are the great granaries of the world, and we have to stop extracting fertility from there and go back to an animal plant system that continually builds the fertility. The great herds moved over those lands. They mobbed them the way we now have learned to do with fencing, and they concentrated the nutrients, and then the lands became more fertile. We can do that, and we can grow food. We don't have to demonize one life form because it has been abused and has been used to produce toxic food in a way that wrecks the environment and tortures the animals. There's no doubt that kind of meat is a crime against nature and an absolute abomination.
Absolutely.
But there's a future, there's an incredible future for including animals. And if we do that and we start to get Roundup out, then maybe we've taken one step to allowing insects to return.
Yeah, the genius of nature will heal itself, right? I'm so fortified by the return of bison across the Great Plains. There's a lot of great projects. Of course, Ted Turner running big herds, and I know a friend in the Cheyenne Arapaho Nation. They were out procuring some buffalo and getting bison reestablished in areas. They've got a program in Texas now, and so bringing those megafauna back onto the land, we have a real need for that, and to stop nuking the soil, right? To let it restore. Yes.
It was actually well-intentioned on the farmer's part to realize that tilling the soil was not a good thing to do, and it was very easy to use herbicides to accomplish that. The problem is, once you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and then they saw, well, we have this herbicide, and we can use it to terminate our crops too. And when you get that level of herbicide presence, in glyphosate in 2000 was registered as an antibiotic.
Yeah.
And that's anybody's not paying attention to that. There's tons of data now that shows that the incredible surge of all of the gut issues, celiac disease, all of those, issues are a direct result of the increasing pollution of our food sources with Roundup. And that's happening to insects too.
Yeah.
The EPA tested to see if Roundup hurt bees, and how they tested it was they put them in a greenhouse and misted them with Roundup for 4 hours. The bees didn't die. You don't die from starvation in 4 hours. If their gut bacteria, if their gut biome was destroyed by that Roundup, they're not going to die in 4 hours. So they found out virtually nothing. And it's not the only piece. There's many, many pieces that are a part of the insect apocalypse, and it's huge. If you're our age, because you used to have to stop and clean your windshield every hour if you were driving at night. And people literally had to clean their radiators or the cars would overheat. And now, you can let your windshield go for an entire summer and you don't have to clean it. It used to be that if you have your door open and the lights on, your house had a cloud of insects. Now I've literally had to work in a shop and have a door open with a light on in the middle of the night to get something fixed in time for the morning. And in doing that, I brought one moth into the room over being with the light on and the door open for 3 hours. That is a disaster. We will not survive without insects.
Yeah.
And the irony is that Roundup is not only, a part of it as far as the pollution, it's the pollen and stuff. Because when it is an insecticide, an herbicide, a systemic herbicide, it's everywhere in the plant. So there's so many ways that the insects are getting it. But it's also the fact that Roundup is now this easy tool to control weeds and make things look neater. And ditches that used to be wild and full of milkweed and other things that nurtured insects, now they're nice and neat. We have this concept of controlling nature.
Barren.
And we have to listen to E.O. Wilson, who said we have to give half the planet back.
Yeah.
We have to figure out how to let half the planet be wild. And we're not going to be turning huge swaths of America into jungle. We can give the ditches back.
Well, we got 1 million acres declared yesterday as a new national monument near Grand Canyon. Thank you. We need to cancel a bunch of oil drilling in other places, but at least we won't be drilling there now.
And we can have yards like Lisa's, which a lot of neighbors, pretty sure think, oh, what a messy yard. She needs to mow and clean that yard up. But it is full of wildflowers.
I'm the wild
It is full of weeds that are in flower. It is a part of the wild.
And there's full of forageable food too. Right? There's a bunch of violets, there's a bunch of birds, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And I just love all the little insects and really enjoying the hummingbirds and all of it. So
would that there were more of them now. But it's not just the Roundup, it's also the imidacloprid is the most widely used insecticide. It's on seeds. People use it to control fleas. It is the DDT of our time. It is more toxic when it breaks down. It persists forever. It is impacting animals in such a way that we can't say directly, oh, it killed them. No, it has sublethal impacts. It makes it so they can't hunt as well. It makes it so they can't avoid predation as well. And this is happening to salamanders. There's a study about salamanders. It's happening to all kinds of life. And of course, it's happening to the insects. And there's just a list of things we're doing. And I think we can actually post the link to an article
Yeah,
that
we
came
have it.
out just very recent. My brother sent it. My brother hates flies in the house. And I was teasing him when I was there, leaving the door open, saying, let a fly in, please. Let there be a fly. I'm like, can we celebrate this fly? Because there aren't any flies. We all hate flies. You know what? We'll see. We're going to put some pictures up too. There's a whole bunch of flies that aren't filth flies. They're actually predators, tachinid flies. They're actually a critical part of the web of life, of the way that plants are protected from predatory insects, herbaceous insects, by predators.
Yeah.
There aren't bad insects. They're sometimes bad interactions. I mean, even filth flies are a part of the fertility cycle. We just have come in and created civilization with improperly taken care of garbage, improperly taken care of sewage, such that filth flies become a problem. But these insects aren't bad. They're all part of the web of life, and we need to celebrate them all and figure out how to let them thrive. And one thing everybody can do is plant flowering plants. And if we do that, then this problem, which is laid out in this article, which is that the pollution that is so dominant in our world today, there's so many different layers of pollution, and one that we've all experienced really heavily on the east coast of the United States this year is the wildfire smoke pollution. For the first time in my life, I was working outside 2 times, thought I was having allergic reactions, except for I only get allergies before the first cutting of hay. I only get allergies from the first growth of grass. And this was well after that. And I realized it was smoke. And that smoke is literally leaving particulate matter on the antennae of insects such that they cannot smell the plants that they feed on or find their mates or find their prey. So it is literally layers of damage that we must undo. Anybody that thinks that they can casually and harmlessly burn some brush or burn some leaves, no. You are impacting life. You are impacting insects. You're impacting our lungs. You're creating layers of damage by doing that. It is time for us all to take personal responsibility as we also empower our nations and our communities to deal with climate change, to deal with the fact that we're going to have more and more wildfires if we don't do what it takes to regreen the planet. What happened in the Sahel needs to happen everywhere. And we need to learn that we can't pave the planet. We need to nurture nature. We need to realize we're a part of it. We need to make sure the antennae of those insects are pristine and able to sense everything. And we could go on about why insects are crashing, and we'll do other sessions on that. We've spoken to it before, but people need to pay attention. It's huge. And most people just aren't talking about it, aren't thinking about it. 70% crash in insects in most places. We're on the brink, folks.
That's fatal for the entire civilization.
Yeah,
and we don't seem to realize
yes.
that the details matter. And those cute little magical insects everywhere really are part of our living web. I have a little web here for spiders. I love them. But we've got over 300 species of native bees here in the mountains. We've got lots of species of native flies. I saw a huge, beautiful black and white fly the other day, as some different sort of the forest type fly. And I just love learning from nature. And hey, let's not wipe it out before we even know the treasures that we have amidst us. And, nature is sacred. We've gone too far. I mean, we really got to make the limits. I'm happy to hear that South American countries are starting to make a cohesive plan to start to work on really making a concerted effort to preserve the rainforest in the Amazon, but all over, right? Regreen your yard. Don't mow this fall. Don't pick up those leaves. They're covering nature so your insects can come back in the spring.
Leave
There's
that
so
can
many
of
things.
Insect spray.
Yes, and don't buy any more insect spray.
Don't buy any more.
Forget it. Pat
Turn it
has
into
a great
poison.
method for getting rid of the wasp nests out there if you need to, just with water, right, Pat?
Well, and indeed, before even the nest, my family really scared of insects. Those buzzing insects freak them out. They're going to get stung. I always wish that people get stung when they're next to plantain. Because if you're next to plantain, you simply grab that plant. This is the weed, not the fruit, right? You grab that plant, you chew it up, you put it on, you renew that poultice a few times, and within less than 15 minutes usually, small red dot, no swelling, no itching, problem solved. Once you realize that sting can be contained, the pain and the swelling can be contained, basically a lot of the terror goes away. You don't need to spray nerve poison in your house. But when I
Right.
found out my sister was doing that, I couldn't tell her that she shouldn't be afraid of those insects. You can't not be afraid of insects if you're afraid of them. But what I convinced her to do was take a spray bottle of water and spray that insect until its wings got wet. It fell to the ground. Basically, it's kind of stunned by that. She could simply pick up a jar, brush it into the jar, put a piece of magazine or paper on top of it, and take it outside and let it go. She spread that technique to all of her soccer mom friends and bragged to me about how they are all not using poison. These are the ways that we can avoid using poison. Over the years, I've had to deal with all kinds of stinging insect nests. And an easy one, maybe another time we'll talk about the ones that are in the ground, but an easy one for anybody who has to deal with the usually white-faced hornets, but there's some other paper nests. If you have a paper or mud nest, you leave it alone if it's not in a place that's dangerous. But if it's where you're walking, then yeah, you can't have it there. We don't want people getting stung. And we don't want people then reverting to poison. What I figured out years ago is you can simply spray a strong, like put your nozzle on stream or, the blast setting, and simply stand 10 to 15 feet away and spray that paper nest with water. And those insects do not attack you. They think they're having the worst weather of their lives, and they're busy trying to figure out
They don't know what a hose is.
how to save the larva, how to save the queen. And they may come back once. I did one this spring and summer where it came back after a few weeks, and I had to do it again. But the second time was the golden time. They haven't been back, and we haven't killed them. Those insects lived. They spent the next few days gathering up those larvae, making a new nest. I'm not sure that every larva survived, but we didn't wipe out every insect. We didn't wipe out the queen. That nest, those white-faced hornets are important predators, important pollinators. We do not want to be wiping them out, but we don't want to get stung. And another way to deal with this is the horror story for everybody is walking into a nest of ground living yellow jackets. 25 stings or something like that. I don't want to say that that's something anybody should experience. It's not. You don't want to experience it. Key thing to learn is to learn, if you're going to be going into new areas where you haven't been, to stop for a moment and look for bee lines. If you see bees that are foraging, they're going to be moving around kind of in a pretty methodical, just darting from one place to another looking for food. But if they're flying in a straight line, they're going to be flying in a straight line to one point. And that point is where that hole is in the ground. And if you spot that bee line, you can avoid it. And maybe you have to take it out. And you can email me at pat@livingfarms.org, and I will share with you a method for that. I don't want to take all the time right now.
Yeah. You know
But
what
there's
I do with
methods.
that in the past, because I'm kind of wild with it, and I
Mhm.
just kind of do a little nature simple thing. And if I find, because I let things go wild a lot, and because I love it, and if I have a ground nest of wasps like that, and I know where it's at, and I maybe need to mow for some strange reason, which I
Mhm.
don't usually do, but I will put a big, rock next to that ground nest hole.
And then you know
And
where
I
it is.
just
Yeah.
avoid it. Because if you don't put something there, you're going to forget it's there, and then you're going to have the fateful day where you step right in it or something.
Right.
And so I just put a sizable rock that I know I would wreck the mower or trip on, and then I'm going to notice it. I just give it a wide berth, and they go through the season just fine. They don't come after me or anything like that. So that was my easy way.
Well, and indeed, I live in CeeLo Community, which is the oldest land trust in the country, and regularly there'll be a notice from our administrative secretary, and we have a little in community listserv, and there'll be an email notice saying yellow jacket nest on this bridge or this here, and basically people may never take that out. They just all know to avoid it, to be aware of
Right.
it, and we can let each other know. And if you can let those nests exist, they are good for the world. If they have to be moved, you don't have to kill the insects and you don't have to get stung. We can give you ways to do that. There's one exception. I haven't figured out how to get ones that are living inside the building without killing them. But you don't need to use persistent, deadly poisons to solve that problem. I can easily tell you a way that works every time. And there are solutions, a couple solutions for that. That's the one situation where I haven't figured out how not to kill them because I can't get to them to make them move. So
But
I have
most
to
of the
kill them.
time you can
Yeah.
do it. And
Yeah.
you don't want to end up poisoning yourself and having autoimmune disorders because you're not immune to poison. We're not immune to Roundup. We're not immune to any of the terrible things that we're doing and spewing out there. but we have the power to stop.
And we're not immune to the consequences of using that stuff, which are way broader than people realize.
Epidemic levels of gut dysbiosis, because when you're killing the microbes in the soil, you're killing the microbes in your gut, as well as the gut of the insects, as Pat was saying. And then what happens? Well, what have we correlated now? That gut microbes directly relate to your behavior and your emotional state. So with massive epidemic levels of gut dysbiosis, people are acting nuts and they're feeling terrible and they're emotionally unstable and they're miserably just depressed and all kinds of things because they're eating food covered in Roundup that is killing off their gut microbes. And that's the seat of your entire immune system. So, this thing about Roundup, to me, it should be really not something we utilize, not something you can go out and buy off of a store shelf. And it's even more dangerous in even smaller levels. That's what's mind-bending about it.
Well, and what's ironic too is that you can't buy it off a shelf very soon. It's not going to be available to homeowners as Roundup. Anyways, there may be other people who are willing to take the risk, but Roundup, owned by Bayer, they've been beaten up in the courts way too much.
They'll relabel it, right?
Well, what they're doing is they're just going to sell it to the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to take the risk because the farmers have to take classes and know how to use pesticides such that they'd be unlikely to get lymphoma from using Roundup.
Right.
They couldn't warn homeowners enough because they didn't want to. They wanted to pretend it wasn't toxic. So now they're paying billions of dollars because they keep losing lawsuits. So they're pulling it off the shelves because it is too dangerous to let the average homeowner use.
Yeah.
They're still going to sell it because their whole GMO system is tied into,
right.
Supposedly they were going to make the world more fertile, more drought resistant, more everything else. What they did was they made the world a great big market for glyphosate. That's what they've done with GMOs.
And we've lost so many varieties of heirloom vegetables because you cannot grow a GMO crop without contaminating everything around it. And so now, as an example, in Mexico, they've lost many heirloom corn varieties and they're starting to put a stop to it because Mexico is the motherland of corn, where corn comes from. It's very sacred. I have some of my greatest memories are making tortillas a mano, with my granny when I was little. The smell of fresh masa, and we've even had a nixtamalization workshop. I was going to say nixtamalización, with Spanish, but got to get my Spanish straight. But it's a very sacred thing, and we don't want to be losing our heirloom varieties, and it's not worth it for one company or one vested interest to poison the rest of us with toxic food that's really unfit for even consuming at all. And it's certainly unfit practices for living on a living planet, right? Life is good. As Pat said, we're not going to kill our way into a good future. We've got to build life. And that's what we're all about here at Living Web Farms. If you'd like to support us as we continue bringing you more great educational content, please become a supporting member here on the channel. Share what we've got to offer. Visit the website. You can even actually download audio from any of the videos. Most people don't realize this. We're really working and working with growers and farmers, right? And growers and farmers aren't sitting around on the internet all the time. They've got to get out there and be with the soil and the plants. And so download the audio. Go to our website under multimedia, go to audio, go to any workshop, download that off our SoundCloud channel, and you could be listening while you're driving long distances, while you're out on
while you're potting up while you're stepping up your seedlings. You can be listening to how to do farmscaping rather than how to spray more pyganic, which is a pretty dangerous nerve toxin.
You can actually listen while you're doing something in the world, like planting seeds, listening to seeds planting and stuff like that. So many great things for you there at livingwebfarms.org and here on our YouTube channel as well. But Pat, we've got some cool stuff to cover. Just to give a sweeping, beautiful overview of some of the great things and scenes that we had, I want to introduce a great event that's coming up this weekend. And Pat has been part of it for almost 30 years now. And it's the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering. It's happening this year in Flat Rock, North Carolina at Highland Lake Cove. Now, for all these years, it's been going on in CeeLo there in your community, right? You've cooked many meals there for it. Tell us about the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering. Again, happening this weekend, August 11th to the 13th. If you'd like to register, there's some spots left for you to camp out and come have a magical community summer experience. Go to southeasternpermaculture.org. But yes, Pat, tell us about this great event and how it's come along over the years and some of the wonderful people that helped start it.
So now she's going to strangle me because before I do that, I realized we posted 2 pictures and I didn't explain them.
Oh.
They were pictures
we can go back to them.
They were pictures of milkweed.
Yes.
And basically, it was to show the incredible life that normally is on milkweed.
Okay, you ready? So we're gonna switch gears
And
real quick.
Then I'll get to the permaculture.
Okay, so hold on. So we're going to talk about milkweed pods, right?
Yeah.
You've got some really exciting pictures here. These things are exciting because biodiversity
They went
is
away,
exciting.
but they'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cue us because we can't see the. Well, we can see.
Well, no. If you've got, if everybody else is seeing it, I know what we're showing.
What is right the whole time.
Okay. So basically, this was just to show what just a few years ago. I checked the timestamp on these. It was 2019.
Oh wow.
That recently, you would have these outbreaks of this is the milkweed aphid, and I always like to say that aphids, if they're not causing you immediate problems, are incredible for insect diversity.
Right, they're like the nature steakhouse. You say.
Here you see, that this is a protein source. These ladybugs are reproducing here. You have 4 ladybugs that you can see there. I guarantee you there were more than that, and they're reproducing because they have a place to get lots of food. They're going to be able to lay their eggs, and their larvae are going to hatch where there's lots of food. And so this happens every year. The milkweed is an incredible plant. You can eat the blossoms. They're similar in texture to broccoli. They have their own unique flavor. You can use that plant for so many other things. An incredible source of nectar and pollen for beneficial insects. This year, why I chose to talk about milkweed, I've got about 60 of these that I'm, right now at least 60, maybe it's 120, that I've been letting take over an area of our homestead. Once I learned about how seriously the monarch population was crashing, because this is the host plant for the monarch. No other plant can host the larva. The larvae have to have the milkweed in order to feed and thrive. And so I put this out here, and every year I can go see, and at every stage, see loads of insects. Now, right now it's in flowers, so there aren't the pods, and usually they don't get the aphids until the pods are happening. And the little aside there is every time you have a plant that is senescing, that's when you're going to see more insect attacks and more disease, because the plant is putting more energy to reproducing than it is to defending itself. It is racing to the finish. So this is kind of a regular cycle. You'll not only see the goldenrod aphids, but you'll also see the milkweed seed bugs. And then when they're in their first and second instars, they are small like aphids and equally delectable to the beneficial insects. Once they get a little bigger, they tend to be a little toxic for the beneficial insects, and they're a little tougher, and so they don't get preyed on. But both of these insect pests happen when the milkweed pod is forming, and they happen in great numbers, and you see huge numbers of beneficial insects. And then on the right, I purposely left this because this is the fly, but this fly is a tectinid fly. It is there. Very likely, it's the one. I can't guarantee. I'd have to get my buddy, Dr. McBug, Richard McDonald, to confirm. But very likely, this fly is looking for milkweed larvae, and it's going to lay its eggs in the milkweed larva. And that's part of the natural cycle. Milkweed larva, the monarch butterfly, and this predator of the monarch butterfly larva have all lived in balance forever. I've now seen articles or listservs where people are talking about helping monarch butterflies, and they're setting fly traps out to kill this fly so the monarch butterflies can thrive. And to that I say, stop the Roundup, stop cleaning the ditches up with Roundup, let there be more milkweed, allow the habitat to happen for the host plant of the monarch butterfly, stop poisoning their guts with Roundup, stop damaging them with neonicotinoids, stop the air pollution that makes it that they can't find the milkweeds, and you won't have to worry about the tectinid fly. The natural balance is there. This fly is an important part of the biology of this plant and insect ecosystem, and you don't need to intervene. You can celebrate it. And I still love, I hope I'll get to see the diversity of insects at this stage of the milkweed, but I'm here to report to you that the huge numbers of butterflies and other pollinating insects that normally feed on our milkweed, which when it's in bloom, folks, if you haven't had it, the aroma is to die for. It's just a wonderful fragrance that is coming from these flowers. They're gorgeous plants, gorgeous flowers, and they're usually abuzz with insects, though not this year. And you can see here how they're nurturing the beneficial insects. So this was just the example I wanted to give because right now I look at my milkweed and I'm not seeing insects, and that's very scary. Hoping I'll see them later in the season, but if we continue to have the levels of air pollution from the fires in Canada, maybe not. So Okay, so now we can go to the permaculture conference thing. I just saw those pictures. I didn't get to them. Sorry. We're new at this. I have to learn to both look at the camera and look at the screen so I can talk about it.
Well,
But
we're really passionate about bringing you wonderful media and education and the great elders and teachers and inspiring events that happen. And so we're really going for it. And this is a brand new adventure here today. We have not done this. We just put this studio together, but we want to be in touch with you, our wonderful subscribers, and we want to keep sharing. So thanks for being here with us. We
and
really
by the way, we have already talked to Dr. Richard McDonald. He'll be doing a show with us. We'll be here. He'll either be in the studio or we'll be on call-in, and you'll be able to call your insect questions into us. You can send your pictures to us. We can put those pictures up online, and we can talk about insects. So we got a lot of new and exciting ways for Living Web to interact with you all as we regenerate a vital planet.
Yes. And you know, one of the things that I'm really excited about engaging with our audience, I've been behind the camera all these 11 and a half years and really loved and learning and meeting all these great teachers. I was very passionate about ag and farming and gardening as a young person. And really, it's just been a great journey. And so now we get to interact with you. We get to come here and get your input. We're going to have polls. We want to find out what topics you're most interested in. What videos would you like to see more of? What teachers are your favorites? You know, this is going to start a whole new level of interaction. We've been meeting people in person. We've been having workshops at our farms for 11 and a half years and feeding people and really being in the same room. And yet we've been growing this global audience, and most of the folks out here, you know, you have not been to the farms, and now we've closed the farms. But we are passionate about our community and we want to move forward. And so one of the great ways that community is celebrated is at a fantastic event like the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering. And Pat's been part of that for almost 30 years. It's coming up this weekend. If you happen to be anywhere near Flat Rock, North Carolina, get over there and get registered. Southeasternpermaculture.org. It is truly an organic community event. Things are formulated on the spot. People decide what they're going to teach. It's inspiring. It's family. It's stories by the fire. It's great food. Pat, tell us about the evolution of this event and how you've seen it grow over the years and some of the wonderful people that have been part of it.
Right. Well, it was as Dr. McBug, my dear friend, Dr. Richard McDonald tells the story. It was him and Tony Cleese and Chuck Marsh and maybe a few other people. I don't want to slight anybody, but I remember those people. And they were sitting around celebrating a successful Carolina Farm Stewardship Sustainable Ag Conference way back when, I think it was 1993. And they realized that there wasn't enough interface between the permaculture community and the farm community, and also the solar community. They wanted to get all of these things, all of which are a part of our future, a future that we can actually survive in, together. And they wanted to build energy for all of them. And they realized they needed to create a place where all of these innovators on so many different levels that were doing the important work for the future could come together and celebrate. And so they created what at the time was the Southeast Permaculture and Carolina Farm Stewardship Summer Gathering. And they did it right in my backyard. Back when I had a bakery, the first time I heard about it, they were knocking at my door, Tony, and I forget who was with them. Might have been Chuck Marsh, and they wanted to buy bread from us. And I had to tell them, no, we're actually closing and going off to study with another baker that week. But you can have all the bread in the freezer, and I'll donate it. So I said, here's the key. You can go down in the freezer, take all the bread. So I got to feed people, but I missed that first one.
Oh, wow.
And then they would come and they had little tours of our garden. I would tour people in our garden. They would go up to Joe Hollis's. Joe Hollis Mountain Gardens is right next to there, and that was always a perennial thing. We've moved this year down to Flat Rock, and one of the things everybody is bemoaning is that we're not right next to door to Joe's, so there can't be that Friday tour of Joe Hollis's remarkable gardens. But there'll be other tours. There'll be other, there's a sweet little garden at Highland Lake Cove, so there'll be some touring there, and there's always those activities. And what I love, what evolved, pretty soon CFSA realized that this was not something that they could try and keep going. It's a little bit more grassroots than CFSA's board was ready for. So it became its own entity, the Southeast Permaculture Gathering. And It is done by a totally grassroots group of people. I haven't been that involved. I don't want to claim to be one of the founders of this. I have been a supporter of it. I've attended when I can. I've donated food from my own farm, and now for Living Webs, I'm donating tons of food. And I've helped in the kitchen and done those kinds of things. I've gotten jobs I love, like, can you go get us all the wild plants you can find to put in our salad? Now, that's my kind of job.
Oh, yeah. Last
And
year we had a big
wildflowers and
pile of
stuff like
forage
that, yeah.
mushrooms.
Yeah. So I've been involved on that level, and it's a place where I can meet up with folks I don't normally get to see. People have been in our videos, like Ken Krause.
Yes.
He gives the most amazing mushroom walks. If you can have a mushroom walk with Ken Krause, I never don't learn a new mushroom thoroughly enough to eat it when I tour with Ken. I mean, it's
Yes.
eventually going to happen that I'll learn them all, but I might be a little bit too old to walk by then.
Yes. To me, he's like the Yoda of,
Yes,
of
right,
mushrooms
yeah.
here in the mountains.
And I
Ken
don't get to
Krause.
see him, but I get to see him at this event. I get to see all kinds of people I don't get to see, and it is the most non-hierarchical event I know. We recognize that everybody has expertise, and Lisa, one of my favorite phrases about why you should go to the Carolina Farm Stewardship Conference or the Organic Growers School is for the community. And I like to say that you learn as much in the hallways as you do in the classrooms. Well, this is one big hallway, because anybody can call for a session, and they can bring whatever level of expertise or desire to learn to that session, and other people who are interested will come and bring their knowledge to that. And I can tell you that this is powerful. One time at Carolina Farm Stewardship, at the Organic Growers School, I organized an Animal Allies class where I wanted people to get the bats, frogs, all kinds of other guard dogs, varmint dogs, all kinds of animals are our allies in growing food. And one of the speakers I had coming was this owner of a bird food seed store, feeder store kind of place. Well, for some reason, they couldn't make it. And I'm standing there as the moderator with no presenter.
Oh.
I feed birds. I'm a bird watcher. I know something about birds.
I can talk about
I got a conversation going. And when we were doing the surveys afterwards, Tom Elmore looked at it and said, wait a minute, the speaker didn't show and you got a B+? And why we got a B+ was because there was tons of expertise in the crowd. The people coming to that kind of talk already know tons of things. And that's always the case. And that's the model that is used at the permaculture gathering. So we don't know what the agenda is till we get there, but you can bring your agenda. And you don't need to be a super expert to call for a session.
It's so fun.
Because you know that there are going to be other people. And if there's a low level of knowledge, then people will be there jamming on that and figuring out how do we learn next. And many an important innovation has happened because of those kinds of sessions. So and then they have wonderful evening, they have drumming circles and an important ceremony. And I know that this year they're going to be honoring the ancestors. A bunch of founders have passed, Chuck Marsh, Patricia, I forget her last name, but a bunch of Kim Chi, who did a lot of the registration, a bunch of the founders have passed, and we're at that stage. And there's been some discussion. Come and Lee Barnes
wait,
still
we're not
still
showing it
kicking.
yet. You're supposed to wait.
Yeah.
Pause. What
yeah.
are you doing?
A bunch of these elders.
I was going to cue you because there's a reason. Pause, please. Go back to the thing.
Anyways, these elders,
Just a moment.
are passing. We're also getting older, and if you come, think about whether you want to become involved in the process. It's time for new blood in the organizing of it too.
Yes.
And it's a grassroots thing. It's mostly done by emails and some text and a few meetings, but not very many. There's nobody paid to do it, and every year it happens. And so it's time for new energy there too.
And I want to say it's really the sweetest community gathering I've attended. It's so natural and so heartfelt and really centered on community itself. And as an example for sessions, last year when I got to go and actually was shooting video of the gathering just to really capture the essence of that and share it. We actually want to make a more long film about it over time and interview many of the great elders that have been part of it, and some people that are either talk about people that have passed or going, to be passing it on, because we're at such a critical juncture, both with organic methods and old-timey methods, and then we had this chemical industrial segment, but now we've got to reach back over to those old ways and really carry them forward with a new generation. And I'm very inspired to see a new generation of farmers. Of course, here at Living Web Farms, we've been trying to plant the seed of gardening in people's hearts and grow more of a community of growers around the world 1 acre, 1 heart, and 1 family, 1 community at a time. But one of the informal moments there last year, just to get a sense of the sharing of wisdom there at the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering, um, they announced out, hey, anyone, if you want to have a session over lunch, you want to share something, raise your hand, and whoever would like to share something over lunch, tell where you're going to sit at a table, and people can sit near each other at lunch and learn even over lunch. And I had just gotten back from the National Stream Restoration Conference, where we featured our Foster Creek stream restoration. And I did, about 25 videos over 2 days that we have to come out. With your support, we'll be getting more stream videos out, but we also have our stream restoration project video that's really beautiful, will be coming out very soon. And I was very excited about stream restoration. It's a burgeoning new science. It's powerful stuff. And I said, hey, I just got back from the Stream Restoration Conference. If anyone wants to sit at my table, I'll tell you all about the exciting stuff that happened. And we had a wonderful impromptu learning session just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, get registered if you want to attend. You've still got a chance. We've still got room for you. It's going to be a wonderful camping weekend, a really pristine, beautiful place by the lake there in Flat Rock. Go to southeasternpermaculture.org. You can register now. But for the moment, have a little taste of the gathering right here with the lovely video from last year.
And I can tell you that as Lisa was talking, I realized that my session is going to be about the plants we can grow that suppress the replication of coronaviruses.
All right.
I have a huge amount of Hoytonia cordata.
There's Lee Barnes. He's been carrying it on. This is the Friday morning session where everyone gets together and says, hey, I want to teach this, or hey, I want to offer a session on that. And the schedule comes together right there on the spot. Or can we turn the music up? It's really a wonderful, inspiring soundtrack. That's cool. There's Greg Gross, and there's Gary Phillips. He was doing divination, and he's a spoken word poetry artist. That's a guy who's a permaculturist. There's Robert Itis of the North Carolina Golden Seal Foundation. Mark Williams, great plant walk guy. And we've got Jim Stockwell.
Promoting the El Salvadorian Agricultural Cooperative, Tierra Fertel.
Here we go. Look at all those t-shirts from all the years of the gathering. Every year a new t-shirt design. That was one of our vendors, Villagers, a nice store. There's Jim Smith, sweetheart there. And some of the cool stuff promoted at the event. Forest farming, events at Earth Haven, United Plant Savers, just all the coolest things and the neatest people if you want to reconnect with nature and the earth and each other as community.
One of the elders that didn't show up there is Rob Messick. Rob Messick is beloved for his ability, there's Friedman, to take you to the old growth. He knows all the old growth places. He's a person who catalogs the old growth forest, and he knows trees incredibly well. He gives incredible tours. But he's also this brilliant mind who's fascinated with the origins and the functionings of the universe. And he gave a talk one time on that, showing how it's all about flow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a deep, deep talk. You know, he's an incredible mind who's also a permaculturist. And that is the breadth of the people who go there. They're thinking on all levels. They're thinking from how to get that seed to germinate to how does the universe happen? Why does the universe happen? It's all there. And it's there in a way that's accessible to everybody. Frankly, I get overwhelmed pretty quickly when I'm talking about the universe. But
well, you know what? I love Rob, and here we are preparing the food. Everybody getting that yummy food. Pat's going to be cooking the meal on Saturday. Some good zucchini lasagna. Can't wait for that with some nice salad. But Rob, actually, I got to talking to Lee and to different people because I want to interview people to really tell us. There's the foraged mushrooms, the story about this gathering and some of the neat things that have happened there. Look at now, watch this guy for a second. He's going to dance. Look at him. He's having so much fun. Really fun stuff making the food. But Rob actually, at one of the gatherings, they came up with this other theory for the origins of the universe. And he sent me the PDF, and it is profound. I mean, it's not just some, zombie idea. This is real scientific stuff. And Rob is on it, man.
He is a huge mind.
The people at this gathering, this is the Cherokee elder Yona. Oh my gosh, he was teaching how to build prayer bundles, talking about how the Cherokee use the crystals and bring the light through the crystal and the connection with nature and the earth and the building the little prayer bundles there, and everybody really enjoying that. And there's Dr. Richard McDonald, Dr. McBug there. And as we said, we have lots of our instructors who have videos here on Living Web Farms channel will be at this gathering, including our very own Pat Battle.
And something to know too is that I'm kind of overwhelmed thinking about taking 2 major meals in one day. That's a lot of work. I made my living as a cook, and usually it's like a breakfast and a meal, or a light dinner after a big lunch or something. But we're going to be making 2 major meals on Saturday. I'm going to be in charge of that. But I'm going to have tons of help, because everybody who takes part in this event, part of the agreement when you come in is that you put 4 hours of volunteer time in. This is people powered. No one's getting paid to do it. No one's serving somebody. We're all serving each other. So it's a volunteer event. It is actually a wonderful model for a way that we can organize society in the future. I highly recommend people come. If you want to be nurtured by community and inspired about the possibilities, then don't miss the opportunity to come to the Southeast Permaculture.
This is it. This is it right here. And that's the Great Circle. And you can join that great circle. Head on over to southeasternpermaculture.org. It's a super good price as well, because it's all people powered, as Pat said. There's volunteer time. It's made affordably. It's not one of those, high ticket tourist events that we have around here in the mountains lately. We've gotten pretty invaded. Okay. we know that being here. I'm sorry. I've been here 25 years, kind of watched it being ruined a little bit. Too many hotels and ruining too many skylines around here, and too many tourists, honestly, who don't really know about the mountains and the way it is up here. So, not really digging the super high pricey events that get touted as local events, but this is a truly local event. It's priced to afford to come, and it's really authentic. So get on over there. We're trying to help boost some registration. I'm going to be there camping in my van and filming. and I look forward to eating some of Pat's great food too.
And folks, the solution to our mountains being loved to death is not to be mad at people to come. I'm glad people love this place. I love this place. I came. The solution is to offer them events like this, the chance to actually connect to nature while they're here, not just be consumers, but to experience real community, connect to the people here and learn from the people here. And provide jobs, people, making good food for them. It's okay. It's fine to have a tourist industry, but what we don't need is an exploitive tourist industry.
Right. What we need is good community leaders that know how to preserve our great trees, preserve our beautiful skylines, have very selectively placed hotels, preserve the forest with the forest plan, and really keep the quality of our mountains intact. Of course, I'm not upset at tourists whatsoever. I'm really more into, hey, local leaders, can we keep our beauty here alive? But the beauty will be alive this weekend, Southeastern Permaculture Gathering, and another great event I want to mention. I hope you enjoyed that little brief video. Look for a longer one later. Is to let you know about the National Stream Restoration Conference. The second annual one is coming right up. And it's going to be August 21st to the 23rd. That's at Baltimore Harbor in Maryland, a beautiful waterside venue there. Check out the event. Register at restorestreams.org. Okay. This is a burgeoning science of stream restoration. Huge constituents there, both contractors and people wanting to give you the tools to do it. Everything from, fabrics and all kinds of different plant lists and you name it, to the government constituents and big projects that are coming together. It's a very meaningful, monumental feeling conference when you go. And I was so honored for us to be the national media sponsor last year, to be able to shoot the event and also shoot Dave Penrose, the wonderful stream restoration biologist who helped us with the Foster Creek Restoration Project. And that video will be coming out, but really great stuff there. And so if you've got any interest at all, go check it out up in Baltimore. It is a fantastic event. I left really excited about the possibility of restoring ecosystems and streams.
And actually, Living Web has been a disruptor in the stream restoration community in a really positive way. When we were asked to restore Foster Creek, which the year I was born, 1951, was taken out of the middle of our farm and pushed over against the road into a nice straight stream, which is how we like those streams, so they don't get in our way and make it harder to farm and all that. And the result of that was that it became the largest source of silt pollution for Asheville and Hendersonville's water supply. So Mills River Partnership, headed by Maria Wise, came to us and said, hey, every year we get to do a big project. We would love to restore Foster Creek. Now, we weren't going to take it and put it back in the middle of the stream, of the farm. That's, that's past. It should have never been taken out of there, but we've now learned to work with the farm as it is. What we did instead is we gave up all of the land between the creek and the road, which isn't very much, but someplace between 30 and 60 feet in a few places. And then we gave 60 feet on the farm side to the restoration. And to do that, I was a little worried because they actually come in and they reconfigure the stream. They put a meander back in it. And Greg Jennings of Jennings Engineering really knows his stuff, did a spectacular job. They take trees and jam them into the bank and create these places that then silt builds up on it and the banks become stabilized, and trees when they're in water don't rot. They're there forever. So they know how to create habitat for fish and help the water to move in a natural way such that it doesn't erode the banks. And also, they basically take what was this narrow waterway, which we're going to show that video. I have a video of literally in April of 2019, there was a big enough rain that it broke the record in Asheville for the most rain in 100 years. And Matthew, which the river came over the banks with Matthew, and we had our entire late summer and fall harvest all condemned because of the floodwaters, but it never left the banks on the stream side. And then in that area, we took the opportunity, since it was made bare by doing this, to grow and start and buy and nursery bed every useful plant, useful to insects, useful to us. We put basket willows in, we put cramp bark, a verbena that is good for, the root is good for helping with cramps. We put the aronias in, like black chokeberry, because it is super high in antioxidants. We put tons of elderberries in, tons of pawpaws, all kinds of flowering plants. One of my favorite, the cup plant, all kinds. And then we replant it and help to propagate what was already there, which was loads of sochan. And we put hazelnuts in. We just jammed all these plants in, such that even the construction crew was like, I want to come back and see this when it's mature. Everybody was just, their imaginations were just so inspired, because usually what happens is you do all this work and then they buy tons of live stakes of a bunch of good plants, a lot of elderberry, a bunch of silky dogwood, black willow, and they drive live stakes. Well, we did that too, to put on the edges so that we could be sure it was, stabilized, it wouldn't flood away. And we were able to get a bunch of juncus, which is a sedge that grows that can be put along the edges. I think it's a sedge, I'm not even sure, but it's a wetland plant. And we were able to put that there to stabilize the banks right away. But we then took it to the next level and grew this useful plant forest. And that's starting to mature now. And that has everybody. We are actually invited to speak at this year's conference. I really wanted John Henry to go. John Henry was a little intimidated. He said, I'm a newbie. I said, no, you're not a newbie. You're an innovator, John. Yeah, we are. We're now, people are saying, I want to do it the Living Web way. So if you get offered a chance to do a restoration, don't think of it as giving up land. We didn't give up any land. We simply converted that land to plants that want to be there and that thrive from flooding, and produce in a way really that it's not likely that you're going to have them condemned, because the food part is usually well above the floodwaters. And so it's win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and when you support the biodiversity of insects that will show up with more native plants, you're going to get more native insects, and your main crops are going to do even better.
Yeah, we made it an insectarium. We purposely chose plants that thrive in riparian areas that nurture beneficials. Willow is one of them. I mean, willow is an incredible plant. We've talked about that. We'll talk about it again. But it feeds the ecosystem on so many levels, and has such potential for usefulness for humans. And then we have all these basket willows, multiple colors. We got them all from Joe Hollis.
Oh, Joe Hollis. If you don't know about Joe Hollis, Mountain Gardens, okay? Go to mountaingardens.com. I think that's the website. And just look up Mountain Gardens Joe Hollis.
Yeah, you'll find
He
it.
is a living legend here in our Western North Carolina region up in Burnsville. And the ASAP, Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Projects farm tour, I would volunteer at Joe Hollis's place because back when I couldn't afford to go on the farm tour, I'm volunteering. I want to sit there all day. I just want to be at Joe's magical wild paradise garden, he calls it. And that's my favorite kind, right? You go there and everything's just wild and growing everywhere. And he is a fount of wisdom on Chinese medicinal herbs and has seeds and so many wonderful things. And we love Joe. He had a big fire wipe out his place last year. So support is always welcome there too. Joe Hollis Mountain Gardens. But yeah, Joe is great. We haven't really gotten videos with him, but he does have some videos online, some nice stuff you can check out as well.
We did that one medicinal thing.
Right. We did one
Yeah,
live webinar thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but has a huge array of plants, and he happened to have this huge collection of basket willows. I was just able, you can just cut them to the ground, take them all, every bit of it was propagated. I was able, literally, I missed some. And he called me up and he said, Pat, there's still some laying here. I didn't get them for 2 weeks. I could still cut them up. They all rooted.
Wow.
So we grew like 800 basket willows. We have like 1,000 or more elderberries in there, hundreds of pawpaws, hundreds of persimmons, all kinds of plants that feed humans and nature. And then tons of things like nine bark and the bottle brush chestnuts, which are all wonderful beneficial insect plants. And so we need to do that because part of what we need to do is the insects can't find their flowers because we've polluted the air so much that their antennae are clogged. We talked about that earlier. So we need to have flowers everywhere. We need them to stumble into their flowers because there's so many flowers. Yeah. And that's an opportunity that you can do with the restoration.
Yeah. Foster Creek Stream Restoration Project is getting completed. There's another step now, and the other half is being worked on. The other
that's
half
the river.
of the
Yeah,
farm.
we also realized we can take the berm down and take some of that soil and build a road that's a little raised, but allow the river more room. We need to stop trying to make the river, this tight channel because it's going to break out, and it's going to break out in ways that are heartbreaking. The crops that are lost to farmers and people that are swept away because we think we can tell the river what it needs to do. The reason bottomlands are so rich is because they get flooded.
Right.
And we need to allow that to happen as much as we can. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we can't let the rivers flood the farms. Biggest one is that we've made the water toxic and the crops get condemned. I mean, after Matthew flooded our farm, I went out and looked at all of our fall seedlings, which were small when they got flooded. They were invigorated by it.
Right. They like that fertility. This is the time of year when the Nile floods, right?
Yeah,
this was the great ceremony to re-fertilize the valleys, right?
Unfortunately, we have Roundup, we have lead from batteries, we have all kinds of things in there. We have, septic tanks that have leaked and stuff such that when you get floodwaters, everything is condemned.
You lose everything, yeah.
And that's ironic because the waters that flooded our farm, that caused our farm to be condemned, are the waters that supply Asheville and Hendersonville with drinking water.
Yeah.
So we need to think more
we don't
about
want any poison in the
how
system.
we're treating our watersheds.
Yes.
And so Mills River Partnership is supported by Asheville and Hendersonville and does important work that way. And we need to start paying more attention to our riparian areas and realize that we're not giving anything up by allowing buffers, allowing floodways to happen. We can turn those into useful plant forests that feed us and nature. And there's innovations we can talk about. There's a next level with beavers. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, making it where they can be part of the system and different forageable nut crops and all kinds of things.
There's a future there. And the future economy, the only economy that's going to work, it's not going to be capitalist. It's not going to be communist or socialist. It's going to be a green economy. Economy that's based on natural systems is the only economy that we will survive as a species in.
Right, and not the economy of chop up a bunch of green systems and sell them for a profit. No. Letting them live and living off the interest, not the principle of our wealth and nature, by taking care and being earth stewards so that we can enjoy, right, the fruits of the bounty, not taking a wholesale chopping down of forests and things like that. That's a pretty insane model. We've gotten to this point because we could, but seriously time to re-examine all of our systems, right? And working with rather than against nature is the name of the game.
And the highest paying jobs need to be the jobs of people that are out there figuring out how to find the abundance of nature in a way that it nurtures us and yet is allowed to thrive. And John Henry's a perfect example of that. He, because of his skills with heavy equipment and yet his plant skills, he's an accomplished biodynamic organic grower, is now constantly booked up for jobs on stream restorations. He started it with us as farming, and as we were going out of farming, he's like, well, Pat, I kind of have more work than I can get, and it's kind of where I want to go. I'm into this stream restoration stuff. And so he is an example of the future economy. We have to find more and more ways that we allow nature in the wild to be everywhere, and we allow it to nurture us with plant medicine, with food that's dynamic. We need way more diverse diets that are way more stable because they are allowing natural systems to thrive.
Right.
And those are going to be
cropping and
those are going to be the jobs of the
Yeah.
future. Those are going to be the good jobs of the future if we're going to have a future. Not saying there aren't always going to be software engineers and there's always going to be lawyers or whatever else, but those high-paying jobs that need to happen need to be jobs about plant geniuses, animal geniuses, people like Luke Cannon, Todd Elliott,
Yeah, Luke Cannon will be teaching right up here at
the
the North
geniuses, the next generation of geniuses, are going to help us to make peace with nature and be nurtured by nature and nurture nature. And then we'll have a future. And
Carolina.
it's not guaranteed, but I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful. I think we can
Work
pull it
with
off.
nature, work with
And
nature.
that's what Living Web is about.
Yes, I love the earth
yeah.
and I love nature, and I really get excited about ways to innovate by being more in balance and not being destructive. It's a painful thing to watch the loss of so much habitat and wildlife just in my lifetime of 55 years. And we can't just run out of road. We've got to change. We've got to change. And it's inspiring to change when you come together in community. Maybe consider going to a local gathering. If you're not here locally, go to the stream restoration, bring that permaculture perspective everywhere you go. And of course, greening the earth starts with just one garden, one heart at a time. And even if you don't have a garden, sprout something in your little kitchen somewhere.
Or stop and notice the birds, notice the bugs. Appreciate them, let them feed your soul.
Get your feet on the ground. Get your feet on the ground.
You're not a bad person if you can't get a garden growing.
Right.
But you are accepting a poverty you don't deserve if you don't connect with nature. Nature is there to nurture you. I guarantee it'll nurture you more than anything on your cell phone.
That's the soul food.
Maybe the exception I've heard, I don't have it yet, but the Merlin app sounds pretty great. Where you can,
I don't know. About
you can turn your phone on and you hear a bird and it tells you who it is.
Oh, wow.
And so I don't need to, I want to honor the genius of technology and all that, but we need to put it in its perspective. And I'm not saying we have to get rid of technology. We're not getting rid of technology, but technology is not going to feed us. Technology is not going to allow the planet to function in a way that we can remain on it as a species. And so there are aspects of it that we can use. There are tools in technology that will help us with that. We don't have to go backwards, but we need to go forward, honoring the traditions that are from the past.
And really respecting, connecting with the earth is super important. And not just on a conceptual basis. Clinton Ober has done lots of studies and invested millions of his own dollars into well-studied proof about inflammation and grounding, and just like electronics, grounding out the positively charged ions out of your body to eliminate bioelectrical, pollution that we accumulate, electrical charge by not being on the earth, by being connected to phones and electronics all the time. So truly being connected to the earth is literally a health necessity. And you can learn more about those studies at earthing.com if you'd like to. I have a grounded bed. I'm grounded to the earth. I have a grounded desk. I like being grounded to the earth. I feel better. I have less pain in my body when I do it. But on all levels, gardening is not just kind of like printing money these days with the high price of vegetables. I got a couple of zucchini because I'm a Southerner. I am. And I wanted to make my little zucchini, my yellow squash casserole. And for the first time, I didn't have my garden in this year. We've been so crazy with the farm stuff. And it was like $10 for a couple of little squash. Organic, of course. And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't give enough of this stuff away when I have my garden in, and now the prices are insane. So not only can you save money, but you're going to get better food. And you're going to get a healing effect by being connected to the earth that way. And it's really fun. And if you don't know how to garden or have an apartment or something, go find a community garden. They'll welcome you, put you to work somewhere, have fun, get out there. Jump out, do something fun.
If you don't have a garden, you can check out the video we did last January called Solar Resilience and see there's food all around you.
Yes.
There's food in every landscape. I mean, I walked out of Lisa's house. There's violets, there's dandelions, there's burdock. All three of those are major food, And I had a friend who wanted to put a little garden between his sidewalk and the road. He had a little bit of dirt. I said, I'm worried about lead. So he asked some other people where he worked, and they sent him a paper they had found where they tested in Oakland, and they looked at all these weeds that you could eat, a bunch of which I never thought about eating, but I could see how they would be food, including dock, including wild lettuce. And they tested them for lead, and there weren't really high levels of lead in any of them, which surprised me and really heartened me. So there's a potential to find food in even the most concrete-dominated urban landscape. The stuff coming up between the cracks real often is edible. Plants like autumn joy sedum, edible. Plants like crepe myrtle, the berries are edible. The leaves can be used as bay leaves. tons of examples I give in that video. There, you don't even have to have a garden, but you want to understand that our world is our garden, and you want to help to nurture that, and you want to take sustenance from it. And if you do that, you're not going to let it go. You're not going to let it become a hell on earth that we seem to be trying to make right now. But
Yeah, we've got
don't need to do
heaven.
that. Yeah,
Why make it
yeah,
hell?
yeah.
You know, so carve out your little section of your little Eden there.
Yeah.
Make your nice little spot. And if an insect shows up, be friendly. Be friendly, right? And can you imagine? Insects are actually very sensitive to vibration. It's been proven scientifically. There's even military applications that are developed based on their antenna and the ability to detect vibration. When you approach an insect or a person or anything with freaking out, you know, they're going to be afraid of you. Okay. And so when you approach an insect or you meet a little buggy bug, be nice, be cool, be like, hi, little buggy. I mean, that's what I do. And you know what? They kind of talk to me. They sit there and go, they don't fly away. They don't bite me. They don't attack me. And they're actually just pretty mellow. Even wasps. I'm not kidding. So be a friend to nature. You'll have more fun that way anyway, because it's full of little people out there, little bug people, little animal stuff everywhere, little raccoon eating my cat food in the back, my old ancient kitty out there. You know, I have fun with that little coonie. I laugh at them. You know, I love the squirrels. I call them all Henry. You know, it's just like, have fun with nature. What a boring place the earth would be if it was just people, only human people. Oh God, I can't imagine a more yucky place to hang out with only people.
Always a pleasure to see somebody for the first time realize that all those little things flitting around have incredible diversity of colors and have incredible diversity of habits, and suddenly get that you could spend hours just watching birds. You know, you could spend hours just. I used to say that I love to be out in my garden or on the farm and just like not be directed, just what I call putter, develop the fine art of puttering in the garden and let my peripheral vision do the work. And you see all these incredible dramas of insect interactions. And I'd say it's more interesting than the old TV show in the 60s called Wild Kingdom.
I love that show too.
Don't need to have, it turns out a bunch of those interactions were actually kind of created.
Really? Yeah.
But you don't need that. Every backyard has the potential to be fascinating with dramatic interactions of insects and sometimes amphibians. One of the pictures I love that I have is of a tiny little tree frog hanging out at the center of a zinnia.
Oh.
And it's just waiting for a pollinator to come by and, going to grab it and eat it, and that's okay. That's a part of it. We're not going to, the pollinators will not be in trouble because of tree frogs.
Right. That's part of the balance. Yeah. That's why we want biodiversity. Yeah. Yeah, it's really great. I've had some incredible things in the garden. You see a butterfly and it's not moving. It's hanging from a flower for a long time. I go up and there's a spider that's got it right there. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at this. Little crab spiders, just waiting, and high drama and exciting stuff going on.
Dr. Bug loves to tell the story of me calling him up and saying, yeah, I saw a cabbage butterfly, the white ones with the dark spot. They're the ones that lay the eggs for the European imported cabbage worm. The green one that's almost the exact color of kale or collard, so you can't see them.
Yep. I used to have my son pick those off and go get the worms.
And I called him up and said, yeah, I saw one of those going sideways with his wings closed, and I realized it was in the mouth of a dragonfly.
Oh, wow.
And he said, as soon as I told him, he started seeing it. So if you have water, you may well see these butterflies flying sideways with their wings closed. That's because a dragonfly got them.
Wow. Isn't it amazing?
I have the picture that opens for the dynamic cover crop strategies is a picture of I think it's a viceroy. I forget the exact name, but it's one of those gorgeous butterflies that's got eyes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a notch where one eye is missing. And that's part of why those eyes are there, is because it gets the predators to think that is where the head is, because they go for the eye. And it's actually that eye is placed in a place that's expendable. So the butterfly was still thriving even though it had been notched. And that's the term. You'll see butterflies where there is an eye notched, and know that is part of this amazing interaction that's occurred between butterflies and the birds that prey on them. And that's why they're so gorgeous. It's, we think it's just a mystery as to why they're gorgeous. There's actually a reason for it. Those eyes are there to make sure that they get attacked where they can take the attack.
Yeah, nature's design is beyond anything we have ever even begun to fathom. I love learning from nature.
That was just that opened just so I could talk about the genius of nature. And nature is absolutely brilliant. And we will be nurtured by it if we accept that we are of it. We are of nature ourselves. We cannot live without it. We can't escape it. We are nature.
Yeah.
If we
and when-
accept that, we got a chance.
Yes, exactly. And dirt is not dirty. We get inoculated with microbes, right? And people that sanitize their home too much, they end up with autoimmune disorders. So soil is good, dirt is good, getting in the garden is great. And one of the things we have, which this is the last call, we're not going to be having further crops from the farms, but we have one. We have one crop left. We've got some of the most beautiful garlic that we've grown at the farms, our last crop there. And do we have that shot of the garlic that we can show you? There's Pat, and look at it, and you're going to see it's behind him.
That's Dr. Richard McDonald. He's the hero of the hemlock.
That's his hat.
Needles save beetles. And that is basically how Dr. McDonald, our beetles save needles. He brought the Laricobius beetle, a fungus beetle from the West Coast. It's native to North America, and it is preying on the hemlock adelgid and saving it. And so he's getting that message out that beetles save needles.
Okay, now check out the series. It's a really great one. We've got more to come. We need your support to continue doing that series. It was a whole day we spent with Dr. McDonald up at the Watauga County Agricultural Conference Center. Meet the Beetles, chronicling his more than 100 trips back and forth from Seattle, bringing this predator beetle over here to eat the woolly adelgid from the hemlocks. And that series is great. Meet the Beetles right here on Living Web Farms.
Everywhere those beetles are, the hemlocks are thriving.
Yes, and they've even won an award up at the Grandfather Mountain Golf and Country Club for a beautiful restoration there. And we want to bring you more parts of that video. So donate now, be a supporting subscriber here on our channel. And let's go back to that garlic, though. Pat's got the garlic.
So that I want to say,
we have garlic for sale. So
we
yes,
actually
Pat.
have one other crop out there.
One other crop. Okay. Turmeric.
Because no, that actually is there too. So we got two other crops. But no, this was like, I noticed that I was walking the other day, and I'm hoping that it's still going to be in good shape to harvest for the conference. We had a whole row of arugula, which we were shut down. They said stop farming. It just kind of sat there. We told Bounty and Sold to come harvest all they want. They harvested huge amounts of arugula, but of course, no matter how many times you cut it, it's going to go to seed.
Yeah.
So it went to seed, and then it rained, and arugula is a wonderful volunteer. And we have a row of arugula, 1,000 feet of arugula out there.
Oh my!
That we didn't grow, but it is a crop that is still on the farm. The land has not transferred to other people yet. So we have yet another crop of arugula, which we may be eating at the conference. I may be getting.
All right. Oh man, I love good arugula.
And I wanted to speak to that
flowers.
because that's another example of abundance. You don't have to do anything with a lot of plants. I noticed that I was cleaning celery seed, and some dropped between the boards on the deck at our Kimsey Road farm, and growing in the gravel now, there are hundreds of celery seedlings. And people think celery is hard to germinate, but plants want to grow. And almost any plant, given the right conditions, will grow itself.
Yeah.
And so it is not hard for us to feed ourselves, and we don't have to do a lot of poisoning and a lot of disrupting of the environment to grow food. Food wants to grow. Plants want to grow. We simply have to get out of the way and maybe tweak things a little bit so that it goes away that's convenient for us. So garlic, let's talk about garlic.
All right, let's get back to that garlic. It is a stellar crop. We really do it up at the farm, so they're living.
Obviously, I'm just awed by the garlic in that picture.
There's Pat. He's like
trying to say,
oh my God.
I can't begin to tell you how much that is.
And I mean, that's way above his head, okay?
Yeah.
I was there. That garlic is a huge, and it's not elephant garlic. This is normal, German white, hardy, best cultivar for our region. This is the most beautiful garlic I've ever seen. And this was last year's crop, but we've got some for you now. And if you'd like to get it, go over to the website. We'll be selling that for $12 a pound. And that's going to go to our nonprofit. And there's a sample of some of the bulbs after they've been picked. And you've got some eating sizes there, and you've got some seed size that you might
We
want
won't
to
be
save.
selling anything for seed that's smaller than 2 inches. I had Dan Hedinger, our biochar facility manager, get his drill out and drill me a 2-inch hole in a board. And if it slides through that hole, even if it barely slides through the hole, it goes to the table stock. It's only the ones that are too big to go through that hole. So
There's
all of it's
Jeremy
gonna be
holding
bigger,
on. Yep.
bigger than 2 inches. It'll all be prime seed stock. It's well cured. And you not only get the seed from me, but of course, even if you didn't buy from us, happy to talk to you about how to grow it, how to have a successful crop.
We've got an entire, well, I don't know if you're aware, but Some of our newer subscribers may not know that we have hundreds and hundreds of radio shows Pat and I did for many years on our website via SoundCloud, and you can go on there. And actually, we had This Week in the Garden, and we did This Week in the Garden
For many
years.
that's
So
right,
you
yeah.
can time travel. You can go back. You say, oh, let's see, it's August 9th. All right, let's go back to an August, first week or two of August radio show and find out exactly what to do. And we've got a whole show in there
And so
around
we'll tell
garlic
you
planting
when to
time.
plant garlic,
Yeah.
and that's evolved. I mean, for me, I used to think, oh, the later the better because I'm busy with other things. But then a couple times I got hit by, and it happened this year too, where we had a really, really warm December, and then we had that dive in temperature. And so we saved our garlic by going out and taking silage tarp and putting it over the garlic, which I was worried was going to crush it. And it didn't. And it went on after the garlic was actually starting to freeze. And I was afraid it was going to break it. It didn't. Though when I came back and looked at it, the garlic was all laid out rather than being straight. It was all these gorgeous rosettes.
Oh, wow.
And I wondered if it was going to mature that way. But no, it came up straight again. We got a really wonderful crop with very little effort. We were basically not staffed. So I actually was hoping to get people to volunteer, come in and get the garlic scapes. Eventually I had to take a machete and just like chop the scapes off and drop them. Because we needed to get those scapes off. And we didn't even get it all out of the ground, but we got a lot of it out of the ground, and it's looking real good. And we're going to have it available for $12 a pound locally, and then whatever the cost of shipping is to anybody.
Yeah, we'll
we can
figure
ship
that out on the
We
website.
can ship anywhere. We can ship but I would say anywhere, but I wouldn't sell this to anybody living in the deep south. This is garlic that wants a cold winter. So if you have a cold winter, this garlic is going to do really well for you. I mean, from where we got it from was Ed Frazier's farm, Frazier Garlic up in New York. And if you don't buy from us, buy from him. He's a stellar grower. He's got wonderful seed, and we bought our seed from him. And so all the way up there, he's way up in the Finger Lakes area of New York. And you know how cold it gets there, and that garlic does fine there, and it does fine down here. It'll do fine anywhere in between. It'll do fine anywhere that you have a good cold winter. So, and this is a porcelain or stiff neck garlic, so you get to harvest the scapes in the springtime. You want to harvest them, or the garlic's going to be smaller, but they're delicious unto themselves. And it also doesn't have a center cluster of smaller cloves. It's all big cloves. So even the smallest bulbs still have nice sized cloves that are easy to work with. It is my favorite kind of garlic to use.
It is so delicious too, and it's
easy
really
to
good.
use, incredibly productive. We have numerous heads that are over 3.5 inches in size. I mean, they're just giants.
And if you don't want to plant it, just buy some. This is the best garlic.
Well, actually,
I mean, it's organic, biodynamic, everything we put in that soil for so many years. We have the best soil because Living Wet Farms, we build life, okay? The whole logo is all about building life in the soil, and it comes out in the food. That garlic is wow.
So when we talked about the integration of animals with vegetables and the fertility systems, we made a point. We figured out years ago that a way to solve some of our recalcitrant problems, like vetch having been used as a cover crop on our farm, vetch, when it goes to seed, puts hard seed out so that not all the seed germinates every season, and every time that it sets more seed, it's doing the same thing. Basically, if you can eliminate every vetch that comes up, it'll take you 15 years to use up the seed bank of vetch. So it's a really tough weed. And we had a really wet year where we couldn't work things, and we lost a big area to vetch and grasses. And we're looking at going, this is only going to get worse. And then Rocco said, grazing. So we started bringing the cows from our Grandview farm, where we do mob grazing, to our vegetable farm and graze the weedy areas. And then we learned that that is the most fertile place. That's where we put our garlic. Last year, when we had a crew, we were able to harvest and cure 5,000 pounds of garlic. We grew a similar area this year. I don't know that we got the same yield because we didn't have the labor, but we got an incredible, abundant, and big, healthy production because of that interaction of animals and agriculture. And you can be the benefit of it. And I didn't give a price for table stock, but we will sell the smaller bulbs, and they could be pretty small. But like I said, even the smallest ones still have good sized cloves because of the way this garlic forms its head. And we'll sell those for $4 a pound to anybody that wants to just buy table stock. And
Yeah, it's so annoying to have to get down in the middle of a garlic and it just turns into a bunch of little tiny slivers.
right,
This doesn't do that. This is like solid, big. You can cook a whole meal with one
One
clove
clove,
off
yeah.
of this thing.
Yeah.
It's so big,
Yeah,
and it's not elephant, it's not watery, it's
Yeah.
strong, it's good, delicious.
And this is a good keeping garlic too. It's been cured really well. If you can keep it cool and dry, it'll last you well into next year.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful garlic.
Yeah,
I highly recommend it for both eating and growing.
A fun thing to do with garlic too, people sometimes maybe overlook or haven't done before, if you have an abundance of it, is to just peel it and ferment it in some honey. And that makes it, just leave it at room temperature, and you can just pop those little garlic fermented honey garlics.
No, that's nothing I've ever tried.
Really
I'll
good
have to
immune
try that.
system
That's
booster.
new to me. I know
Oh.
about black garlic. A lot of people are doing black garlic these days.
Yeah,
It's
you
long,
just peel
slow
it,
cooking. Yeah.
crush a little, peel it, and just put it in a jar of honey submerged, and leave it in there, and it just preserves the garlic, and you get all those wonderful allicins from the garlic in there, and then you also get the benefits of the honey.
That sounds like a really healthy thing.
You'll
Yeah.
stay well all winter because you've so much antiviral properties in there. And but here we are. It's August 9th. We're kind of getting into our, really the peak of summer is sort of passing here in the mountains. We're already getting some cool nights, right?
Yeah,
It's already
every year this time of year you get a hint of what's coming. Yeah.
tiny hint. And so, but it's time for a fall garden, Pat, right? You can do something. You can do a little something for fall. And there's always a chance to roll the dice and plant some seeds.
So well, and indeed also, we're very fortunate if you're in this area, and there are other areas that are equally fortunate to have lots of farmers markets. And farmers take their extra seedlings or grow seedlings to sell, and they have the best plants for your area. I don't want to put down the nurseries and garden centers. They got good plants too. Some have better selections than others, and some have more savvy growers. But farmers are going to be selling the seedlings they use.
Right.
And they use the ones that work for them to give a good crop. And they also have the knowledge of how to use those particular varieties and what those varieties will do. So go to your farmers markets and look for seedlings, because it is frankly a little late to count on things like kale and collards giving you much of a fall garden. You can get plenty of
sliding off.
you can get plenty of late fall, early winter vegetables by planting now. Great abundance. And indeed, you could even plant in September and you would get an early winter garden. But if you want a fall garden now, you want to buy seedlings that are established, and you want to get them in the ground immediately.
Okay.
You don't want to fool around. You want to get them in. And something like right now, I'd still plant Brussels sprouts because I love them, but it's way late for them. But if you do that, then protect them so they can come on next year. Likewise, rutabagas, likewise parsnips. It's kind of late for those kind of things. You got to direct seed parsnips, rutabagas. You might be able to buy plants. I know that Wade's, Troy's greenhouse in Burnsville, sells rutabaga plants. There aren't a lot of places.
Oh, that's hard to find.
Yeah, but I mean, the best rutabagas you're ever going to have are ones that have gone through the cold of December into January, and you're harvesting them in February.
They're gonna be
Those
sweet.
things are sweet and rich. I mean, there's just a richness
Creamy,
to them.
rich. Oh.
They're this deep orange, and they're just like, it's almost like, did somebody cross a brassica with a winter squash?
Yeah.
The flavors, the textures are just. I used to actually say that rutabagas were the one vegetable I didn't like.
Oh.
And my mentor at the Highland Lake, Tresca Lindsay, looked at me and she said, you disappoint me. And then that year we had a big crop of rutabagas, and I figured I got to try these again. I tried them in January. I was eating rutabagas for breakfast.
Yeah, because good fresh garden food is a whole different story, right?
And kale, collards, you can get those out
store.
right now. And just get them in the ground, and they're going to give you greens like crazy. All of the salad greens, now's the time to plant them. Spinach, a great time to plant spinach. It's not going to do a lot in the heat, but it's going to be up and ready to take off when it cools down.
That's right.
Now we have to hope we actually get a fall.
Yeah.
We have been a little bit burdened by climate change in that lots of times it's still in the high 80s in October, in which case, keep planting. Just keep planting successions, and eventually you'll hit that window where they'll take off. So time to put leeks in. There's a bunch of onions like Walla Walla that you can plant now and will get huge next May. And they're oftentimes really sweet. And you can look up in the catalogs for the ones that will overwinter. Another one that works well is Bridger. There's also one, Desert Sunset. That's the earliest one. bunch of those onions you can start right now and plant out and let overwinter. They can take the cold. You can also plant sets, the few places that sell them, and you'll be getting maturing bulbs in the late fall. All the salad greens can be planted now. Great time to plant carrots. Great time to plant radishes, especially the daikon type radishes. This is the perfect time to get huge, wonderful daikon. Beets, it's still not too late to get beets in the ground. If you're doing beets, remember their Achilles heel is they are really boron dependent.
Yeah, we found that out from Dr. Mark Schoenbeck.
If you have not tested your soil and you haven't applied boron anytime recently, you might want to get a soil test. And unfortunately, this time of year, you probably want to go with something like Wayside Labs, because you're not going to get your North Carolina test back in time to tell whether or not you need boron for your beets. But literally, you could send the test in, and you can water that boron in as the seed's germinating. It's just, you simply have to figure out, how much it takes. And it's going to be like tablespoons to a large area.
It's
it takes
tiny amounts, trace minerals.
And then what you do is you take that and you get your watering can and you see how much water you need to get that distributed evenly over an area. And you first do it with water. And then when you figure out exactly how much water you need and how fast you have to walk, then you dissolve. You can literally just use borax. That's nothing but boron. But you can also buy an organically certified, allowed boron. And you simply water that in. So you can get your test in now, plant your seed immediately, and then come back and add the boron later. And by the way, if you're planting carrots and beets, think about stale bedding. Can't do it for very long right now because you're running out of time. But if you gave it even a half a week where you have your bed prepared and you water and flush those first flushes of rapidly germinating weeds, come through them with a flamer or a sharp, very shallow hoe, or maybe even hand pull them and get that first flush of weeds out, then plant your seed. But plant a little area at the beginning of the row the day before you plant all of your seed. And the day that those ones come up a day early, that's the last time to weed. And then a flamer is perfect, or hand weeding. But if you get that done, then when your seeds pop, they will be on an equal footing with those fast germinating weeds, and they won't be ahead. The weeds won't be ahead of the beets or the carrots. It'll be a lot easier to keep it weeded.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things you can do right now to have food this fall, and then keep planting until sometime in early November, probably, I would say.
Do successions and then get your row cover ready, right? Get your row cover ready because, and as Pat said, don't be the Lucille Ball show, out there in the middle of the winter storm, get it ready and be prepared on one side to throw it over, and you'll be ready to protect your crops and have a beautiful garden all the way through
You want
the
to
winter.
set your row cover up so that the windward side is where it is attached to the ground. And then you roll it up to that area and put a staple over or two so you have this rope of row cover around your bed. And then what happens is we get these fronts coming in, right? And then it's this combination of cold and warm air and oftentimes a big rain, and then the ground is saturated, and then you get a radiation frost where the heat is just leaving really quickly, and at the ground level it freezes. And you realize that's happening. It's the first frost. You got to go out and protect your plants. But by the time you realize it, the big winds are already here. And that's what the I Love Lucy show is. Trying to put row cover on in a big wind where it's not attached anywhere, very hard to do. But if you have it all attached and you just simply take those staples over, the wind blows it over the bed, and you can just simply come throw a few sandbags on or a few staples, and you're protected.
I actually did it once. I actually listened to what Pat said, got a bunch of nice row cover over it, and it works so nice. Because
you can pull your
the
crops
prevailing
through.
winds are going to come from the north at that point, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
you
the
just
west,
be
usually it's
strategic
the north or the
about it.
west.
Northwest. And then, floof, they just blew right over. But au contraire, you go the opposite way, you're going to be in struggle.
And so it just does, those kind of little tips can help you to get there, and a little bit of protection can take crops way further. And then, as it gets colder, you can then come out, put some hoops over that, put some plastic over those hoops, and you could take your crop through any cold that comes. If it's half or even a quarter hardy, as long as it's got a layer of row cover and a layer of plastic over it, it'll freeze solid, but it'll freeze slowly.
Right, that's the key. So you
don't
don't
freezing
burst the
slowly,
cells.
hardy plants can get the water out of their cells so they don't get ruptured when they freeze. Instead, that water freezes in the spaces around the cells and works like an igloo. And so you are actually I literally, the first time it happened, I did the protection, I counted on it, and I walked out to my greenhouse, and all of my lettuce was popsicles. And I thought, well, that didn't work. I blew that. There goes all that stuff. And then I came out when the sun had been shining for a while, and that lettuce was all gorgeous and growing, even though it froze solid. So
Wow.
if they're hardy plants, they can freeze solid. They just have to do it slowly enough. And that's what you use the extension for, season extension. And so that's a little later, but knowing you can do that might have you inspired to keep planting. I said you can plant into the beginning of November. I've actually planted in December and was eating food in February. So it's never too late to plant. Don't give up. You've missed some deadlines. I like to encourage those deadlines. I would have been starting my plants for fall garden in early June. I would have been planting and then keeping successions going. So I would have started planting my fall garden in late July. I'd still be planting it, except for I don't have one this year. I will next year for sure. But if I were starting right now, I would plant everything out, everything that I've talked about, and know that it's going to come in a little later, but it's going to still feed me and give me tons of food. So don't ever think it's too late. Get that food in the ground, eat from your own land, share it with your neighbors, got a little extra, give it to the local food bank. Be a part of the abundance system. The one perpetual motion machine we have in the world is the sun, and the engine of the sun is plants. That's how we are nurtured, and it's an incredible wealth. We do not have to be poor. We can all be deeply, deeply nourished from natural systems, and nourished in many ways. Because if you're doing that, your heart's going to be singing, your soul is going to be very, very happy.
Yes, yes. And get together with people while the weather's warm and the food is abundant right now with fresh gardens and things like the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering happening this weekend, where you can meet people. And
Lee does a seed swap there.
yes, Lee is going to Lee Barnes.
Always has a seed swap, and there's a plant swap. I've brought lots of plants there other times and just given them away.
Now, Lee has
There's
been
also
one
some
of
people
our
selling plants there.
yeah, Lee's been one of our instructors. He's another one of the people who will be there at the gathering this weekend and has really helped support it over the many years it's been going on. And he is just a great spreader of seeds. And you can go there and sit down at the seed saving table. He'll have them, and you can just load up all kinds of hand collected seeds from all over.
And if you're coming and have extra seed,
For a
bring it,
donation.
because that's how it works.
For a donation. It's
how it
not by
works, yeah.
charge, it's by donation. You get all the seeds you want, you give something to help support that. And Lee goes through a lot of work to bring those seeds everywhere. And if you want to see more about Lee Barnes and his seed saving passion, you can see that video right here on our channel, Seed Saving with Lee Barnes. That's from an old Carolina Farm Stewardship Association conference that we got that video. And we also have a dowsing video with Lee. Lee also teaches dowsing there at the gathering this weekend. Again, the website for that included in the link below at southeasternpermaculture.org. We also have a link for the article Pat was mentioning about the insect antennae being clogged up with the particulate matter in the air from wildfires and things like that. And we also have, excuse me, the third link to the National Stream Restoration Conference, which is resorestreams.org. And I'd love for you to get ready to check out the whole video series we have of our Foster Creek Stream Restoration Project that we'll be featuring soon. And just might get that some more footage from last year's conference as well, videos coming out with your support. So please check it out. Become a supporting member here on YouTube. You can also contribute directly your tax-deductible donation to livingwebfarms.org. Got that all set up for you. We want to keep this growing, keep building life, and support you in more resilient practices and enjoying a quality of life. There's just nothing like fresh food, connecting with people over good organic food, and really supporting nature and just a healthier way of being.
And if you need other seed resources, we also have Edmund's seed saving workshop and Keith's seed saving workshop. We did three of those. And also, I always have to recommend Suzanne Ashworth's Seed to Seed. That is the go-to source of how to save seed. She gives you which plants cross with which, what kind of distances you need, what other strategies you need. She tells you how to store seed properly. She tells you how to start that seed. It is an amazing book. And no gardener should have should have their bookshelf empty of that book. That book should be on
Seed
every
to
gardener's
feed,
seed. Yeah.
okay?
Seed
And
to feed.
we
Suzanne
can maybe
Ashworth. Yeah.
Suzanne Ashworth. Yeah. And storing seeds really is the key. If you don't know how to store them, forget it.
Yeah.
Next year you open them up, they're all moldy or something, or
Yep.
oh no, and stuff. So, but it's very inspiring. I'm so happy you've gotten to come in here today, Pat.
Absolutely.
We're going to line up all kinds of great guests, other instructors from our videos, other cool people doing cutting edge things out there, and really look forward to seeing our audience take part with us, to engage with us in this wonderful process of growing life, growing community around regenerative practices, organic living and farming, and just being healthier and balanced with nature. It's a great honor to be here. We'll be back next week. And right now, we'll just leave you with a beautiful trailer of our channel now showing the gorgeous Living Web Farms. You'll see some aerial shots of the stream project and many other, well, precious moments from the years. Thanks for being here today. We'll see you next week. Here. Play the trailer. Take me out there.
I can't take you off now.
Okay.
Well, I've got to hit the road. When I flop my nose.
They can't.
weren't really, do we have it? We weren't really planning a Q&A. Jumped on there, answered several of them for you very quickly. Is there any other questions? Pat can answer them. We answered the garlic variety type. We answered several other conservation organizations and a few other things. Any other questions, you're welcome to shoot them out right now. I'm checking the chat, okay? So you're free to toss one out there, and I'm sure Pat will give a great answer. So I think we're good. I've got the garlic variety is German white. That is originally from Ed Frazier's Garlic Farm. You can check that out, but we do have it for sale. Like we said, $12 a pound. And this gathering, again, is the Southeastern Permaculture Gathering. There is a link below in the comments. And many other conservation organizations you can also be part of and learn from, including the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association and Organic Growers School, which is still going great. So
both of those, you can just Google them and you'll find them. They're really wonderful organizations. Highly recommend them.
All right. So thanks for being part of the chat. I don't see any further questions. We'll talk to you soon next week.
All right.